Worthless. That's the word he used. The word that broke me, but also set me free. He told me I was worthless, and I knew right then and there that I was done. But what I did next, he would never have seen coming. Let me tell you about Robert, my husband. We've been married for over 40 years. You would think that after all this time, he'd at least have some respect for me. But that's not how it works, is it? No. For years, I've been his caretaker, his confidant, the one who made sure his world stayed in balance. But what did I get in return? A man who thinks he owns everything, including me. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. We were sitting at the dinner table that night. I'd made his favourite meal. I thought maybe, just maybe, tonight would be different. But then, as he took his first bite, he looked at me with this cold, empty stare and said, "You're worthless. All you do is sit around all day." I froze. The words hit me like a slap in the face, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the years of accumulated neglect, of being ignored and undervalued. I had become nothing more than a servant in my own home, a woman whose worth was reduced to the chores she did, the meals she made, the endless care she gave. But that night, that was the moment. I knew I had to change everything. I could no longer keep living in a house that I had poured my heart into, only to be treated like I didn't matter. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. But I didn't just leave. I didn't pack a bag and walk out the door like he expected. No, I sold the house, without him knowing. Now, you're probably wondering how I pulled it off. I'll get to that. But the most shocking part? When he walked back into our home and thought he still had control, I handed him the papers. And that was the moment everything changed. But let me take you back to before all of this happened, to the years of built-up resentment. I'll show you how I went from being a woman who thought she had no power to someone who took back everything I deserved. Because Robert had no idea that the most valuable thing in that house wasn't the property or the furniture, it was me. And I wasn't going to be his anymore. The argument didn't start off serious. In fact, it was about something as trivial as the groceries. But it escalated so quickly that I almost didn't know how we got there. I was standing in the kitchen when Robert snapped. "You always waste money on unnecessary things. Maybe if you were a bit more careful, we wouldn't be in this situation." His words were sharp, bitter. But when he added, "You're worthless," everything inside me just froze. I've spent years trying to ignore the small comments, the little digs, the things he would say when he thought I wasn't listening. But that night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. His tone was different, crueler, and for the first time in a long while, I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something that hit me like a ton of bricks. I had wasted so much of my life trying to make him happy. And for what? To be told I was worthless? The house, our home, was supposed to be our sanctuary, a place of memories, laughter, family. But instead, it had become a prison for me. Robert had always been the dominant one, the one who called the shots. He made the money, he ran the show, and I was just supposed to follow along. That's how it had always been. Or so I thought. But things had been building up for years. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a caretaker, a servant. Robert didn't just take me for granted. He acted like I was invisible. Every day was the same. He'd come home from work, expecting dinner to be on the table, the house to be clean, everything in place. And when it wasn't, he'd snap at me. He'd criticize me, call me lazy, worthless. Each comment dug deeper into me, and I let it happen. Quietly, silently, never saying a word. That night, though, I couldn't stay silent. I felt a fire inside me that I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't going to be treated like this anymore. No one should be made to feel like they don't matter, not even for one more minute. But what could I do? Leave? Start over at my age? It felt impossible. But then I thought of something. Something radical. I decided right then, as I stood in that kitchen, that I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to take back my life. And that's when I started making plans. Plans that Robert had no clue about. Little did he know, his world was about to come crashing down. But first, I needed to be smart about it. And that's exactly what I did. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't just walk away like he expected. No, I had to do something that would shake him to his core. Something he would never forget. It was time to stop being passive. To stop letting him believe that he held all the power in our marriage. I was done with being invisible. And that meant making a decision that would change everything. It wasn't easy. The thought of selling the house I had helped create, the house that held all of our memories, felt like a betrayal in itself. But I wasn't betraying the house. I was betraying Robert's belief that he could control me forever. That house wasn't just a building. It was the symbol of everything he had taken from me. I was done being his afterthought. So I began to make moves behind his back. Slowly, quietly, and with precision. I started by meeting with a real estate agent. At first, it seemed harmless. I was just getting an idea of the market, right? But that first meeting was all it took to plant the seed in my mind. I didn't need Robert's permission. I had the means. I had the power, even if he couldn't see it. I could do this. Over the next few days, I gathered the documents I needed. I had savings, small, but enough to cover the upfront costs. I started researching the legal aspects, talking to a lawyer, and getting everything lined up. Robert never suspected a thing. He was too busy with his work, too consumed with his own little world. To him, everything was fine. He had no idea that I was planning to take control of my life in a way that would leave him speechless. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the house. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self. It was about showing Robert that I had more power than he thought. And so, I signed the papers. The house was sold. Just like that. It was as if I had flipped a switch. I was no longer the woman who waited quietly for change to come. I had become the one making change happen. But I didn't tell Robert. Not yet. He was going to find out the hard way. The moment was approaching. The moment when he would walk in, thinking everything was the same, and I would hand him the papers that would shatter his world. I could already picture his face. The disbelief, the anger, the confusion. And I couldn't wait to see it. It was the night I've been waiting for. Robert walked in like he always did, his briefcase in hand, his demeanour arrogant and sure. He called out for me as he made his way to the kitchen. "Dinner ready, Ev?" The way he said it, like I was still just the housekeeper, still the woman who had no say in anything. But this time, I wasn't going to serve him dinner. This time, I was going to serve him something far more surprising. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, a calm smile on my face, but inside, I was anything but calm. My heart was pounding. This was the moment I'd taken control back from him. I had the papers in front of me, neatly stacked, just waiting for him to sit down and realize what had happened. He didn't know it yet, but his entire world was about to shift. Robert walked in, humming under his breath, completely unaware. As usual, he didn't notice the tension in the air, the fact that I was sitting there waiting. He dropped his briefcase on the counter and looked at me, a faint smirk crossing his face. "So, what's for dinner, Ev?" He expected the usual, the same routine. But what he didn't expect was the feeling of the ground shifting beneath his feet. I watched as he sat down across from me, looking at me expectantly, still oblivious. I didn't say anything at first. I simply pushed the envelope toward him, the one with all the legal papers inside. He raised an eyebrow, confused. "What's this?" "Go ahead, open it," I said, my voice steady but every word filled with purpose. "You're going to want to see what's inside." He looked at me, still skeptical. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" "No joke," I replied calmly, my voice unwavering. "You don't own this house anymore." The look on his face was priceless. Robert's fingers trembled as he tore open the envelope. He scanned the papers quickly, his face turning pale as the realization hit him. What is this?" he stammered. His voice was unsteady now, and for the first time in years, I saw a crack in his armor. "The house is sold, Robert," I said, watching as he absorbed the full impact of what I had done. "I sold it, without you knowing." His eyes widened in disbelief. "You sold our house? What are you talking about? You can't just—" But I didn't let him finish. "I did. I've had enough. I'm not going to sit around and let you treat me like I don't matter." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert stared at the papers, the room so still that I could almost hear his heart racing. He sat there, utterly stunned, unable to grasp what was happening. "You—" he started, his voice shaky as if the words were stuck in his throat. "You can't do this, Evelyn. This is our house." But it was too late. The deal was done, and there was no going back now. Robert was realizing, too late, that he had lost everything. The house, his control, his grip on me. It didn't take long for Robert to realize that his world had just shattered. The house was no longer his, and the life he had built around it, the power, the control, was gone. His initial shock turned to fury, but all I could do was sit there, quietly, as he raged. "How could you do this? How could you sell our home without even telling me?" His words were laced with disbelief. But I didn't have to explain myself anymore. I had taken the steps I needed to, and I had done it for me, not for him. The house was legally gone. The sale had been finalized. Robert's name was no longer on the deed. I had taken back something he had taken for granted for years. My freedom, my self-worth. I didn't just sell the house. I sold the idea that I was invisible, that my value was determined by his needs and desires. I had allowed him to treat me like a shadow for so long, but no longer. This was the final act of defiance. The final proof that I wasn't just his wife. I was someone who deserved respect. As Robert paced the living room, trying to figure out what to do, I could feel a sense of relief flood over me. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel, but this was power. It wasn't the power that came from money or status. It was the power of reclaiming my dignity. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even known I'd been carrying. Robert tried calling the lawyer, his voice cracking with frustration. But the more he fought, the more I felt a sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxious about his anger, his tantrums. I wasn't afraid of losing anything, because I had already taken everything I needed to move forward. After that night, everything changed. Robert's pride, his sense of ownership over the house was shattered. He tried to salvage his reputation in front of his friends and colleagues, but the damage was done. People saw him for who he truly was, a man who thought he could control everyone around him, including his wife. He began to unravel, both personally and professionally. His business started to suffer, and he became more isolated, more bitter. No one wanted to deal with the man who had been exposed as a bully in his own home. On the other hand, I started to rebuild. I moved into a smaller, more peaceful home. It wasn't grand or fancy, but it was mine. I had the freedom to live on my own terms, without worrying about Robert's anger or his demands. I found new friends, people who valued me for who I was, not for the role I played in someone else's life. I began to rediscover passions I'd forgotten about, things that made me feel alive again. For the first time in years, I was free. Robert never truly recovered from the shock. He called me several times, begging for reconciliation, but I knew I was done. I wasn't the same woman who had silently endured for decades. I had taken back my life, and I wasn't going to let him back in. One day, I sat in my new living room, a cup of tea in hand, and looked out the window at the sunset. The house may have been sold, but my spirit had been set free. I smiled to myself, knowing that I had the power to live the rest of my life on my own terms. I had reclaimed my worth. The final chapter of my life wasn't defined by Robert's cruelty or control. It was defined by my strength. And that, in the end, was worth more than any house ever could be.